So why do we really have banks? What is the point of them? Why do we have to put our money somewhere else? Why can't we just keep it? We're going to talk about this today when we explain the new ways of trade and how banking led to the decline of the manorial system. So we have our do now, we have notes, guided practice, same old, same old. And so also we have a quiz on Wednesday. So that is going to be over Friday, today, and tomorrow. So you want to make sure that you are keeping up with these lessons and going back to them even when you've submitted them. So this is your do now. Under the free, I already started it. You're going to answer these two multiple choice questions from Friday, and then you're going to give me 5 changes and advances in farming. This is actually a web diagram on Friday, but I made for it to make it easier for you. I just made it boxes. So go ahead and pause the video and fill that out. All right, so for number 1, under the 3-field system, farmers divided their land into thirds, letting 1/3 rust unplanted. Now, what is one way to think about it is 3-field system. Automatically, 3 of these options talk about a third or some sort of number of fields. In D, they're talking about the ownership of 2 fields. No, we're talking about a 3-field system. For B, it says farmers use 1/3 of their farmland for raising cattle. That only talks about 1/3 of the land. We're talking about 3 fields. So farmers divided their land into thirds, letting 1/3 rust unplanted. So if you're ever stuck about what exactly the 3-field system is, you want to refer to at least looking to the number 3. If the number 3 is not in the response or possible answer, it cannot be correct. Then, why do farmers let some fields lie fallow? So if you weren't sure what the definition of fallow meant, then you would have trouble answering this question. But fallow means unplanted. And the reason they did that was because it was to increase the soil's productivity. So think about this. Think about when you exercise, right? You keep doing the same rep. You keep going like this. Eventually, if you keep doing it, your muscle's going to get tired. Well, they didn't want that to happen to the soil. They didn't want the soil to get worn out. So they would give it rest. That's why in between working out or days of working out, you rest. You don't constantly work out. And that's so that your muscles can recuperate and gain that strength again. And so that's the same thing that they did, but with soil. Changes in advancing in farming, we have the iron plow. We see this starting the use of oxen. We see the 3-field system that includes using the system of crop rotation, and then the horse harness that allowed horses to dig deeper and faster. So go ahead and pause and get that if you need to. All right, we've got quite a few words today. Our first word today is a guild, and if you notice there's something different about your notes here. I've added a context clue sentence just like Miss Sagal does in vocab days or on vocab days. And I would like you to copy them just like she has you copy them so you get a better sense of how the word works in a sentence rather than just what it means. So our first word is guild, and this is a group of workers practicing the same skill. And an example of that would be a workers' union. And you'll see that today. And I'll go more into that in detail shortly. After her training, she was able to join the Guild of Electricians, so a group of electricians. Cease means to stop. I asked my brother to cease from taking my computer to play Fortnite. So I asked my brother to stop from taking my computer to play Fortnite. Commerce is the activity of buying and selling. So e-commerce or electronic commerce involves the buying and selling of goods online. And then revive is to restore or bring back. The success of the movie revived her career and she began being offered many roles again. So the actress wasn't getting many jobs, but she was in a big movie that made her successful again, and she started getting all of these jobs now, and her career was revived. You also see the word revive if someone has died, and then they try to revive them. They try to bring them back. So go ahead and pause and get those, including the context clue sentences, including them. It's going to help you, when you read the text, understand the word better. So these are just two types of guilds. We see a merchant guild and a craftsman guild. So these were two over umbrella groups of people that were doing the same thing. So we have guilds that were merchants that were strictly into selling things, and then you have the craftsman guild where you'll see a lot of little guilds that practice different crafts or skills. So this would be a craft guild. I know it's a little blurry, but I'll go through it. This is kind of how you'd start. You'd start as an apprentice, so you wouldn't really be paid. You actually paid to be trained. And then you trained for about 2 to 7 years. You lived with your trainee or your trainer. Oh, that would be the trainee. You would live with your trainer, and then you would progress. And you would be required to master that skill. Then you would become a journeyman or a day worker, and that's when you would work 6 days a week to that skill. And then if you could move up to a master who would own the shop and would work with other masters to protect their trade and would basically be the journeyman's boss. But you can go ahead and read this more on your own if you want. It also tells you what they do to, or what the guild services provide for members, and what they also provide to the community. This is just a map of the medieval trade routes that we're going to be talking about. So we see the white circles like here and Constantinople and London and Paris and Venice and Cordoba. Those are all major trade centers. So that's where you're going to find those big markets and all of the merchants and all of the people coming from all these places to trade. Sorry, I just ate lunch, so I'm like tongue-tied. And then these blue arrows are the routes, and you can see the arrows that show in which direction they are going. All right, let's start with some guided practice. So, trade goes global. In the early Middle Ages, trade networks had shrunk. Few people ventured far from their village, but after AD 1000, commerce revived. So there's two of our vocab words. Commerce, the buying and selling of goods, and revived, which means what? To bring back. Good. So the buying and selling of goods comes back. Trade began tying Europe to the wider world, bringing the cultures of Europe, Asia, and Africa into contact once again. The Crusades contributed to this revival of trade. Crusaders returned from the Holy Land with a taste, or an interest, for Asian spices, perfumes, silks, and other goods. Italian merchants worked to satisfy these tastes by importing, bringing in, trade goods from Asia in their ships. As trade increased, merchants needed to transfer large sums of money. Merchants often traveled long distances to buy and sell their goods. These journeys were difficult and they were risky. If you were a merchant carrying coins, you could easily lose a fortune through a shipwreck or by being robbed. So now we're going to kind of get into why banking played an important role during this time. Italian merchants solved this problem by creating a system that included bills of exchange, aka paper money. This was a system similar to the one used by Muslim traders. Bills of exchange allowed a merchant to deposit money in a bank in one city and withdraw money from a bank in a different city. So merchants no longer needed to carry money on dangerous journeys. So it prevented that robbery. The banking system made many Italian families rich, especially in cities such as Florence. And we'll get back into that in like a couple weeks. In Italy, banking also contributed to one of the most important developments of the High Middle Ages, the revival or the rebirth of towns and urban life. So we have two questions. One of them happens to be a cause and effect, which we've been working with a lot lately. We want to know what caused the Crusades to contribute to the growth of towns. And here I have down here, you can't really see it on my screen, but it says, think about what they encountered when they traveled. And then number two is, why did banking contribute to the revival or the rebirth of Italian cities? So you can go ahead and pause and answer those questions, and we'll come back together and go over the answers to that, as well as the annotations as to where to find the answers to those questions. All right, so let me move my face. Number one, the Crusades contribute to the growth of towns. How does that happen? What is the cause of that? The Crusaders traveled, and they traveled to the east, and they come across these new items, these new goods, and this they start to go home and they start to miss it. They want it. So that starts this thrust of trade, this like push to get all of these things. And so that brings more people to towns because they want those items too. And you could find that in this. It doesn't explicitly say it, but it is implied. So sometimes in informational text, it's not going to give it word for word the answer, but you are going to have to kind of reword it and dig a little deeper to better understand the text. That's why it's so important to know the meaning of keywords. And then why did banking contribute to the revival of Italian cities? Banks attracted traders who attracted merchants, and these groups led to the expansion of cities. So because banks attracted traders and merchants, and the bankers would hold on to money for them, these groups then led to the expansions of cities because more and more people were coming, and you could find that information right over here. Now, we're going to move into, we've had short answers before in my lessons, but we're going to move into a new system that is just like science class when you have a written response. You'll have a question and then you'll need to respond in CER, your claim, your quote, and your reasoning. So you'll restate, provide evidence, or restate and answer, provide evidence, and then explain how the evidence supports your claim. So our question that we need to answer first before we move on is why was there a need for a banking system during the revival of trade and towns? Why was there a need for a banking system? Why was there a need for a banking system? Your response again should restate and answer the question, provide evidence from the text, which would be a quote, and explain how this evidence supports your claim or your reasoning. Okay. So go ahead and pause, and I want you to answer this question, and we'll come back and break it down. But please pause and answer the question on your own. All right, so this is my exemplar response or example of what I should be getting from you. And again, you have your claim, your evidence, and your reasoning. And I color coded so you can understand exactly what is what. And I know in science class that you are expected to highlight in different colors the different parts of the response. So for my claim, I have there was a need for a banking system, restate, during the revival of trade in towns, restate, due to the influx or bringing in of people into towns for trade after the Crusades. Crusaders returned from the Holy Land with a taste for Asian spices, perfumes, and other goods. Italian merchants worked to satisfy these tastes. There's my quote. And then my reasoning to support that quote is that because so many people were interested in purchasing these exotic goods, merchants needed an organized system for handling their profits. If your answer does not look like mine, make sure you copy it so that way you have an example of something you can refer to in your lesson, in your slides when you move on to the next question like this that you have. Then you have your independent practice. You'll be reading about guilds. And then you have another written response. Make sure you use the quote from the last slide. So right here, it starts with weavers. You want to use that quote to answer this, answer this question. Then you have more reading and a compare and contrast question. And then you've got a couple multiple choice to wrap up. And then you are done. And then tomorrow we are going to start talking about how religion affected more than just the church and how the church affected more than just religion in this time period. And then Wednesday we have a quiz. So make sure you are definitely looking over those multiple choice questions because they will be on the quiz. Thanks, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.